So welcome, Ryan. This is Ryan Babbage from OceanBlocks, and he joins us from a cafe in Korea in the depths of winter where it's -2, and I'm in hot, sunny Australia. So today we're going to talk about, Ryan's take on the crossroads of the planet. At the moment, he works very much with different nations and countries, and he works mainly with businesses in terms of strategizing for them. He does a lot of different things, but he's pretty much got his finger on the pulse of what's going on the planet from a business and economics point of view. So I thought we'd just start by talking to Ryan and getting a bit of his viewpoint on how he sees 2025, having been through a rough couple of years in 23-24 with the economic things and various stuff going on, waiting for Trump to get in. Trump's in now. So everyone is now waiting for him, though, of course, to make a decision on what he's going to do. If it's not one thing, it's another. So from your viewpoint, what do you think this year is going to do and how's it going to shape up?
Like with all years, I look at things with a lot of optimism. I think things build on each other. I don't think that anything, when you reach the top of a mountain, you've had to climb all the base layers before you've got to that top to see that view, enjoy what's there, the cleaner air and everything else. And I think people forget that, they're always looking for the result rather than the journey most of the time. But you can't build anything without putting in the foundations. So, just like it takes time to build a skyscraper and you've got to, dig miles into the depths of the earth in order to really, the taller the building, the stronger the foundations, the deeper the foundations, everything else that you need. I think it's part of what change is all about, So I think that as the world changes from, whether it's climate change or, political instability, whether it's the food issues or, quality of life or whatever it is, there's things that need to stabilize all of those core issues. And until you build in the stabilizers, then nothing's going to build around it. It's like, if you don't have the right soil for the right seed, or you would know better than this, the analogy, but, you can grow amazing things if the, environment is conducive to what you're trying to do. So I think this year, as all years, I continue to look at things with optimism, but I know that the world focuses mainly on economic output gain. Our consumerism is pretty much at its highest it's ever been. So I think a major focus for this year from, what I'm educating clients about and in economics and in strategizing for business is also how to change the behavior or mindset of your core and then the people you serve. And then, how to make all of that function and flourish as a conducive method forward for doing whatever it is you're attempting to do in the space. So yeah,
Do you think the ESG laws coming in will alter that, or do you think they'll just pay lip service to it? I mean, we hope that they're going to drive actual change, but do you think they will?
well, again, there's good and bad on both ends of that scale. I think that there's a lot of bad that's been done in terms of how it's been weaponized. And I think people have taken note of that. And so the taste is a bit bitter when you mention the words ESG at the moment. But I think at its core, there's still some really good value to be had, whether the acronym changes somewhat, as long as things are not weaponized against us. As soon as you start to do that, then I think that it dilutes the value of what you're trying to do in the first instance. And no matter what it is, whether it's a technology, whether it's a strategy, whether it's an adoption of something of some sort, you could either use it for good or you could use it for bad. It's in the hands of whoever wields it. So I think having Trump in power and having, Trump notably because he's, the American economy is the known economy, still the lead in most things. And what he does will tend to have an overflow effect to all the other economies, and how we balance that out and transition from here to there, or strategize or compete or connect and work in unison, or whatever it is. It will flow from policies he's able to generate on that end. If not, then there's still things in the middle that work, you know. His core frameworks will spur on other things, whether they're positive or negative, as cause and effect of everything else in the world. So I lean on the side of optimism consistently, and I keep pushing in that direction. So that's what I do.
I have to say, Ryan, with the last few years that I've been working with you, even when things look quite bleak, I've never once seen you get down about them. And I think the thing I find most inspiring working with you is that you have this viewpoint that there is always another way. Like you never feel, I'm backed into a corner, I can't do anything, which I imagine many CEOs and corporations get into, even if they don't admit it. And I think that certainly for an entrepreneur, and I would hope that entrepreneurs will be listening to this, that it's something you have to maintain no matter how long the journey. And it does seem to be that the longer the journey, almost the more likely to get a reward based on just in the way that I watch you operate. So, I mean, I love going along with it, but it's very new, but it's interesting to see your attitude, which I think is really very good.
And it's the same principles. Like the whole saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, is still true today. Everything is still changing, and as long as you find the vein of interest for you and how to maneuver and adapt around that change and make it work for you, whether it's, a business or a relationship or whatever it is, then you know how to position yourself to receive the good side of that, and
The thing,
or to
um,
avert it.
the thing that I'm seeing that you do, though, which I've be very interested to hear your take on, is that you're very particular about sort of laying in plans or laying in steps in order to operate, and yet not really ever actually committing something financially or overcommitting or putting on staff or doing anything until there's a really firm deal on the table. And I see that with a lot of startups and maybe even new CEOs, is that they go out there and they get the money and they blow it. It's like for me, a strange way of thinking, having been brought up in a family business, that seems to be very prevalent in startup land. Whereas I've made a real point of not. I didn't go out and get money, but I've also never employed people because I was like, well, until I get the money coming in, even $1 coming in the right direction, I'm not going to go and do that outflow thing. And that just seems to be a real culture shift where people do that, go out and get the money first, like go out and get, I suppose, investors. You want the job you do a number of different things first. I'm curious to see what your take is on that.
Depends on what it is. There are certain things that require you to trial and error quite a lot, and as long as investors understand that, then they're on side with that, like it's R&D kind of budgeting, then that's fine, because they know that if you get it right, the potential on the returns are massive. So they're not too fussed on the R&D phasing. But when you're going out to look for money from investors and you're trying to build your business, then you always have to give away something. If you give away too much too soon, then you've diluted your value quite a lot. Yeah, when you reach the middle side of the business, or when a business is starting to function as something that's valuable, you've already given away so much of it. And that's why there's tiers of investors. You got your really early stage investors who are savvy and want to give away as little as possible for as much as possible in return. And you've got those that are, less risk averse, but they still take on a bit of risk. They're willing to give you more money because you've proven the pie a bit more. And then you've got those that are just scaling your business, and then the other end of that, where they now using it into a merger or something like that. The tiers of money change, the requirements change, and your proof in the pie is, being demonstrated from here to there. But That's generally the rule of thumb. But like with AI and things like that, that model's been proven redundant already because look how much money has been raised with AI and the returns weren't yet there, but they blew massive budgets, massive budgets. But
I
the
know, crazy.
potential on getting things right later when you do is again going to be exponential. So I think it's in whatever you're investing or taking on as something that's going to, generate you a return of X at a particular period of time. You always have to factor in how long is my stream for when seeking to gain your returns. But as long as that math works, as long as that equation functions out, it works well for you, then I think we're on the right course. But it's
And
definitely dependent on what it is that you're doing. If there's variations to all of these things.
And do you find there's any one nation you prefer to go to for investors from a, say, cultural viewpoint about, the Americans are known for this and the Europeans are known for that, the UAE for something else? I mean, do you feel there's a flavour for it in terms of the investing of what people they want to invest in? I mean, they all want a return on their money, but some are more
Yeah.
risk averse than others. What's your viewpoint? I mean, Australia, I'd have to say, is terrible for investment. So I know this market.
No, absolutely. I wouldn't even mention Australia in the investment basket. I haven't really seen real investors in Australia. There are a few, but I mean, if you're comparing to other markets, it's a non-existent market and investment for sure, especially for startups. There's just no leadway, no run up, nothing that's substantial or even backing that as a movement
Yeah.
taking place. So I wouldn't even consider Australia.
Well, they take
Generally,
so
your
long,
question,
right, at the beginning. Mm.
yeah, I mean, your question's interesting because culture plays a lot of different factors into how money is moved in place and where it's trusted and so on. um the Japanese have a very different way of investing compared to the Koreans, for example. The Singaporeans have a very very different way to investing when compared to the MENA region and the UAE and all of those types of cultural investment is very complex. But what I'd probably answer the best way to answer your question is to say, if I'm ever seeking capital, I'm going to where it's going to be, if the need base is greater in that space, then it's easier to convince for the money. If you find something that you're trying to sell or promote and that economy is in dire need of whatever it is, or the investors are seeking such things, then you're bound to get the traction that you require. But if the space is, say in an emerging economy, this will play out a bit differently. So if I was looking to do something in a particular space, say Africa, Africa is a huge continent. Pick any country, but say it was Nigeria, and I was seeking to do something special there, and the laws were following, they were backing that structure of investment, basically. I wouldn't necessarily be seeking the capital from Nigeria, but countries that would be supporting the activities within Nigeria. I would look
Which
at it
get a
differently.
feedback in some way. So how they get
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, everything is a strategy, and you have a way, a method, a means of doing things. So, strategy it is, it's ever flowing. It's like how everything in the world changes. You continue to change and adapt to whatever it is that you're doing in the situations around you. And you just need to build in the right channels and pathways to succeed in the space.
Mm.
So, you adapt. This is why strategy is so important for every single thing that you do, whether it's I'm doing R&D to test this in this market for this reason to attempt to get that, or whether I'm going to move my business from one space to another. Um, whether I'm going to grow my business via acquisition or whether I'm going to add an additional IP, acquire that IP from elsewhere, or expertise or anything that's going to, build that business. You've got to develop strategy to follow that channel of thought.
So what if you're not, what if your particular skill set doesn't include strategy? Like if I were to think about, for instance, the chess player,
Queen's Gambit, yeah.
the Queen's Gambit, and she ends up going and getting training, and she gets a lot of help in the end to beat the Russians. I mean, I know you're a strategist, so it's hard for you.
I wouldn't say it's the easiest thing. Strategy is all about playing out scenarios over and over again to determine what the various outcomes would be. It's like math in a way. And if you can plan out all of these scenarios and see that the approach is still looking to be conducive, it's the right approach, or you're less risk in that approach. Because everything's associated with capital and cash flow. So if you don't assess it that way, then how will you be able to convince investors, that, hey, these are all the scenarios, these were all the potential plans. I chose this one because of this, and I chose this one because it's got more security in it. It's got earlier capital in kind of placements. It's got, ways that we can measure money better. We can get earlier returns by doing this and this, or we've combined these two things in order to get earlier returns while we're still planning for the thing that's going to give us the larger returns, but that takes 4 or 5 years to build, for example. So we will be giving you this much return back within this time frame, and once we reach this point, then we'll be able to do that, and this. So you're kind of always demonstrating to them that you've got, a broad way of seeing the things that you're trying to do. You've also looked at the many angles that are there, and you've assessed what you see to be risk, where you see the rewards to be, where you see partnering to be, a better gameplay, or whether you need to now leave out certain things because these are too risky for now. You're basically showing your train of thought, and once you can do that, you've already demonstrated to the people that are investing in you that you don't think in one dimension. You're able to overcome things by, okay, this issue came, so now what? Am I a dead duck and they're sitting in the water now and got nowhere to go, no paddle to row my boat to the shore? You've got to figure out and demonstrate, no, there's another way. We'll wait for this current to come in and we'll go this way and do that. And, you're just showing that you've got adaptation and logical train of thought in your processing.
So there's two things that come up when I hear you say that. One is the person who has too many options and the person who doesn't think of any. So, you can have so many options on the plate that you can't make a decision. And then you've got, obviously that skill of being able to sift through them all and see which is the one that's got the most viability in it. And then if you're passionate about doing that, which most startups certainly start off with that, I'm just going to go this way and that's all there is to it. And I know, talking from you, like for instance, like driving in Dubai, you'll go all the way over here in order to turn around and come back this way because you've seen the strategy of what you just said, where it might even put a bit more IP. So when you get to this point, it'll have some confidence to get going and investors will be interested. And I wonder how many startups or investment ideas that you've seen that actually have thought about the breadth of that before they come to you, because I know you add strategy into businesses. But
yeah,
how many have you ever seen that have got, I don't know, some sort of strategy and maybe they had too many options, or they had a different way of looking at these things also. But the thing I really wanted to bring into this was from the point of view of integration, is that one creates the future. And we're always manifesting the universe around us and manifesting the future. So much as you can see, what it is as a strategic process, I can see that you could also decide to create something into the universe and actually integrate it. I just sort of wondered how you saw that. Maybe from the point of view of even, how Trump brings it in. The creation part is really the main point in a way.
I think the main starting point is when you think about people who start a business, they're doing it they're either creators and real innovators. They've come up with a solution for something that is going to be valuable. They may not be the right people to take it to the world, though, which is a journey that they need to assess on their own. Not everyone who comes up with a good idea. Yes. So not everyone who comes up with a good idea is the right person to take it to the market. Or if they've got people that they can afford to do that on their behalf or partner with, or, then give away some equity in order to flesh out that business a bit more, then for sure you can get there. But it takes many different skill sets in order to achieve the outcome. It's not going to be like, okay, for example, I'm a great innovator. I've created this special thing that the world's going to now use. Now, which market do I, set it in? Where do I seek my capital from first? How do I test it to prove in layers that these tranches of investment are right for each segment of the market that I'm going to be, introducing my innovation to? You've got, so many things to think through. But again, coming back to where it's going to be in greatest need and to prove that need in stages, and then to seek the capital from the spaces of the market that are going to continue to help drive that initiative as fast as possible. Because quick action is the most important thing when you're in business as a startup, because when you're small, when you've got something valuable, as soon as it starts to prove its value, larger investors are already around the corner, either replicating, copying, or, adapting to the market with your solution. So speed is, like Elon Musk's strategy, he's not really cared about the IP, he's cared about the speed. If he can connect to the market quicker than anyone else and prove that his value in the market is there, he's going to be a leader. That brand is just going to be known and synonymous for whatever it's being introduced to do in the space.
It is interesting watching him do that, because he'll be like, when he's looking at the Doge and the stuff that he's doing in there, he's like, well, why do we even need all these people? Let's just cut them out and we'll work around the clock. So like they do when they work for me. Like he's so used to making it happen on people working around the clock and stuff. I'm curious to see how he can do that in a government framework, which is just such a different culture.
Yeah. And also the Achilles heel of automating too quickly. I mean, obviously the world is going to thrive off automation and already is, and robotics and all the things that we have that make things better, faster, more efficient, cheaper. Our, economics of business, obviously it's where we all need to go. But we also need to figure out in the interim, once you take away those jobs, what happens to those people? Where do you re-educate them? Where do you reintroduce them back into the market? Because you solve one problem to create another. If you take away, say, tomorrow, we have driverless cars and there's no more drivers to take us from A to B and B to C and wherever, all the way to these. Now, drivers being the number one job in the world, being removed from the world, and say all of that's now automated, where do you think these people are going to generate income from? Yeah, I mean, and super apps are taking control of the world, right? Because the more functionality they put into things and the more can be done from the space of from an app. I can order my cleaner, order my lunch, order my taxi, gift shop for someone, do everything in one space. It's taken out a whole lot of workers, right? So the thing is, we are, like I said, you'll be solving one problem to create another. So if so many people are out of work and can't get work and can't upskill quick enough, can't do this quick enough, the alternative is, there'll be a higher rates of crime, for example. There'll be, more people pushed to the wall in desperation. There'll be things that are, some things need to be gradual, some things need to be quick. Making those choices is where you need to have the right governments in place, the right, people and financiers in place.
Governments, the right governments. Which country has the right governments ever?
This is the dream world that we'd rather, envision. But
I would never have thought would have got in the first instance, and now he's back in on the second instance, and I'm like, and it's just, to me, there's such a change, and there's so many global underlying waves of change that seem to be,
let's say, in government. So, like, say, in the 50s, I've got this wild thing happening where I've got my kids watching that old show, Mad Men. And, I watched it many years ago, but they're from a young generation viewpoint. They're like, oh, my God. It was like, I maybe grew up with the ends of it, and it wasn't that astounding to me, but they're just so astounded by it. So you've got this real contrast within one or two generations occurring. And I just sort of see what is the underlying wave running underneath it that we're not looking at. Whilst change is sort of like a toad in a water boiling occurring, there are other things which are really dramatic, like we're talking about the thing about the lack of jobs, but there are other stuff underlying it which seems not to be climate, but a whole ideological change in the culture in terms of what they will and won't tolerate and what they want to have happen. People talk a lot about changing the whole government system, but now I see they would never have quite said that before. Now it's really almost the most prevalent baseline thing. We have to change the corruption at the government level. Bitcoin got in, it's now been put in. We have to change the currency because, that's all corrupt. We've got to, one after another of these sort of underlying waves of, what we want, with this connection. We want change, we want integration, which is why I've called the podcast Integration. And it's this idea that we as spiritual beings, because I think ultimately that's the thing that we've thrown out with the religious ditzing of all religions. We've thrown out the fact that the thing we critically are underneath it all is created beings, and everything you do about finding a way to create the future, either within the common reality or putting the idea to have it generate into the future, even if it's not here. That's still the nature of a creative being, and the kind that the leaders in the world are always creating a new reality and seeing how to quietly just move it into the future from non-existence into existence. So I think there's more and more of a desire for that change, out of the way. We have been doing things for maybe 100 years where the dominant viewpoint to sort of more integrated cultural, the extreme thing we just had happen was the woke. Everything goes minorities, then they get the seniority thing, and that kind of went, whoa, this is too out there. But we're sort of waving in and out of extreme right to extreme left to extreme, it's like if there's a way of expressing it. I'm curious. So anyway, I'm curious to see how you see that from a business point of view. Like, you can obviously predict things, but then there's also what is and what are you creating? How do you see those two in that sort of push me, pull you of existence?
There's a lot of stuff that you've mentioned there. Probably the best place to start is to start with the leaders. You made a comment that said, leaders create. Not all leaders create. They a lot of them just adopt what everyone else is creating, and
I suppose entrepreneurs and innovators, but yes,
but from the space of because leaders, because we were also talking about Trump and governments and things like this, so they just supposed to put in place the guide rails and structure in order for things to accelerate when mass adoption is there. How do we have rules around certain things that make it better, that make it more reliable, more efficient, more trusted, more this, more that? guide rails are the important things. And so you need that from structure of government, good government. But how it's going to accelerate and expand in the market is normally private capital or public capital if it's a public business, or, certain tiers of investors who see future outcomes. Those are the visionaries in really changing the world, because where money moves, change occurs.
Yeah.
Because if you are, we all got a lot of things that are on our minds, but if we can't seek the capital backing, that'll do good causes like, create more ocean produce that's of higher quality, or do things that are better carbon sinks for the world, and, add better additives to this and that, and, making soil and structure the way it should be. We've got plenty of ideas, but whether we can get the right type of financiers to back in those plans and to see the world in the same way, that's where the whole thing of money comes back, turns around. And I think people are only now happy to part with money when the laws are conducive to that. If you look at the crypto space, only real serious investors came in and are coming in and continue to come in as the laws and structure get better, because they know that their money is going to be, it's safer,
It's interesting what you say in terms of safety and guardrails. I mean, the biggest changes that I've seen really, and certainly this year, the sense that I've got talking to people is a great sense of optimism since Trump got in. Like, just, well, something will go right. They'll be in whatever field people are in. I've been feeling this. It might just be my circle, but I'm curious, because when I listen to him, I did listen to him on the Joe Rogan interview, which was kind of extraordinary, and he doesn't have any plan. He works absolutely from the seat of his pants. Like, it's amazing he got in. It's like the fact that he got shot. It's like, oh, I got shot now. I mean, he's in the present.
Look, I'd put it this way. The difference with Trump is that he has a lot of people who know things that back what he does. So even though what he says and how he approaches things, seems to be quite like on the pulse, he just does it as, as there's still some method to his madness, because the people that back him tell him what to do and how to be, where to keep things in alignment, The rest of it, they maneuver around what he's already said, because now what's already been said can't be changed. So then they'll find a way to make it legit or concrete, or, build in better structure around it, or things like that. But
I don't know, Biden and Trump, the two wildest things you could put in opposition to each other. One demented and the other one completely unpredictable.
But again, so I mean, of course, looking at it, totally Trump is a better option. I knew he was going to get back in, for sure. I knew for sure. I didn't ever think Camilla was going to get in. It's just because of the way people view the world. And the reason why I was so banked on it was because it was the way money was going to flow. Everything comes back to that question on the money. So economics is more, a lot more vibrant and buoyant now that Trump's coming in. You've got a lot more options in there, and there's money moving, and it's like nothing happened, But before that, there were a lot of talks on, how economics is playing out, the cost of living issues, the housing issues, the crime rates. There was a lot more talk. Yeah. More than that. And then the rest of it was just defense. Oh, are we doing this? No, are we going to do that? No, we changed policy here. No, we're going to make it better. We're going to make this, don't worry about it. Look over here. Don't focus there. Things take time, So it really depends who you're talking to. But, from an economics perspective, having Trump in power is definitely going to be better. Political issues are going to be very interesting. Because geopolitics is also going to, make or break the business decisions that are made in 2025.
Obviously,
and
people
also
have invested banking on them like a gambling gig.
exactly.
Will be in or out.
exactly. And also adaptations to conditions that occur because of. So cause and effect, if this new policy comes in and then that doesn't allow money to move as fluidly to do this, then there'll be adaptations again, So that's going to be a constant in 2025. This is why strategy is so important for everyone. Whether it's at home living strategy, how do I manage my money? What do we do? Whether it's business strategy or whether it's, partnering and entering new markets, all of these
How do you
things.
think people could learn it? You obviously had it from a young age innately. How do you, because you've told me your life story, but how do you think people can actually develop that skill? I don't think chess is going to do it.
I think it's going to be difficult to find the entire skill set in a few people. I think you're going to need to break it up and there'll be different people to do different things. And when it all comes together, it's
strategy, a financial strategy.
Yes. So you're going to have different people doing different things that accumulate to that one strategy. And the results of what they're all testing in the market will determine the strategy. I think that's it's a more common way to see strategy than to pick the winning horse. That's a bit different. You'll need to have a variety of skill sets to do that. And I think the thing that gives you that most often than not is experience. So either you lean on the experience of others from those demographics and spaces, and they've known and succeeded in those spaces, and you leverage that. And then now how will this function in this space that's entirely different with a whole new culture and a whole different dynamic of how people do business? Now, even that adjustment, you've got to now reassess everything again. And it's a adopted strategy, but it's evolved to suit its current demographic. So that's why it continues to fascinate me. Strategy is the most fascinating thing for me. How to adapt to change that's constant. Because once you've figured one thing out, something else has just changed. So how much time do I have to change to accommodate that new change?
If you've made all that, let's say you make a strategy and you've made all that business plan sort of pitch,
and you've maybe got the money for it, and then you need to pivot instantly as a startup. You have to, and yet, your investors, they're really only agreed because of another strategy. How do you go about convincing them of the change, or, not appearing like a flake because you didn't stick to something? Maybe you have an intuition about it, or,
I mean, it really depends on the change you're adjusting to. If it's something that the world knew was coming, then you need to have provision that into your initial strategy to demonstrate that it was there. If it's something the whole world couldn't have predicted, like COVID, then of course they all have to assess that in its merit and say, well, no one knew. So now, okay, what's the new gameplay?
That's pretty easy when it's completely unpredictable. I suppose I'm thinking more about something in the market forces changes and that isn't obvious, and yet the person intuits that maybe they've miscalculated something, or they intuit actually something is going to go this way rather than that. And I suppose I'm getting back to that inner journey thing of the individual who can sense things. And I think really, when you talk to any of the sort of big successful people, they made their decisions in a few seconds with a gut instinct.
But they're leveraging. But those kinds of people are leveraging that past understanding of the markets, the past understanding of how they've adapted to several problems and things. It's
let's market stuff with money, but let's say you're with a startup with an idea.
I don't know, like I had this bee company come to me recently, and they've made this whole idea based on climate change and floodwater and adapting bees so that, because it's $1 trillion industry of agriculture not being able to get its pollination. So that they're kind of banking on climate change in a way, and it's highly unlikely to turn climate change around, but, or anyone is, but, maybe they get a sense of something because they're on the ground with the bees and they go, actually, we need to stop making this product in this direction and do something completely different in that direction. But they've already got investment for going in a particular direction. That's sort of more what I mean. That was a bit of a random example, but I'm just saying that when there is something that maybe the person on the coalface knows, that's not a financial thing, but more of a
built on experience, but an intuition of something. It's more that sort of stuff, I suppose I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, if you've been given money to feed into something, and that's the ultimate reason why the money was deployed, why it was given, you'd need to have a very good reason why you're not going to utilize it for that now. You need to call emergency meetings and say, hey, this is the reason why we need to adapt the strategy. We still have the money, we haven't deployed it. This is the big change that's just come to light. And before we utilize this money, we wanted to make sure that you were in agreement with this, That's the approach that I would take. But I mean, in the discussion of these, it would be difficult for me to give you some concrete, solid advice because I'm not a bee scientist or anything like that.
I think it's the point, isn't it? When somebody has a fix in something and you, who's the money person, got for strategy, and you have to kind of go on the person's gut feeling on something. That's kind of what I'm getting back to, is that integration of those two things.
Well, you see, money is looking for accountability. If someone is more accountable and credible, because they've either succeeded more often than not, and so their track record and reputation is good. If Elon Musk asks for $7 billion tomorrow, the market will respond because it's got a track record of achieving. So they won't even really look at the merits of what it is too deeply of what he's putting to them. They'll say because of his track record, it's behavioral economics. So money is looking for accountability. If I can demonstrate accountability with the next innovator or the next company that comes to market and shows that we're gonna be quick, nimble. We're not gonna be, overly invested in either direction. We're gonna make sure that the pathways play out, and as they do and substantiate, we're gonna add more and more and more to that, and then we're gonna scale heavily. Your acceleration and pace of acceleration changes. It's like reaching a curve in the road. You slow down a bit. You make sure you got the right angle and trajectory to come out, and then you can accelerate again. It's the same like business. So you just got to be, I've got several corners coming up, and there's two curves, and we're going to do this, this, and this. And in those corners, it's going to give me enough slowdown time to assess whether I've been doing things on acceleration right, or whether I've carried in too much heavy load into a quick, I've come in too hot into that corner or curve. So pretty much you have to always be, your response time needs to match, and your think through strategy needs to match the situation that's come up. And then investors are going to be happy because they're always going to know that, number one, you came to them, you were truthful, you came with the issues ahead of time. You didn't go and deploy and burn the money and then say, look, I need more now because I think this is the way to go.
So, Ryan, we were talking about Trump and getting into this sort of political influence about, he wefts and warps all over the place, Trump that is, and more predictable methods of actually doing something. And where's your attitude, the way you go about doing things, how do you, let's say, interface between those political things that affect which decision you're going to make from a business point of view when you're strategizing either for your own startup or for big business making the next move and the next decision, with that interface or that backdrop of the political things, moving things that might require you to have to pivot and move away from that? I think we were talking about startups before as well in that mix, but how do you address it?
So I guess if I'm a startup and if I'm doing well in one market and I'm looking to enter another or to expand on what I have in another market, then I would be looking to see which market has got better frameworks and legal structure to adopt whatever it is I'm trying to do. because if I don't have those structures in place, it's very likely that the capital it will shy away from the initiatives as well. If I can't demonstrate that if I deploy capital into that space, and these are the frameworks to help me manage that capital in that space, and these will be the predictable outcomes, and then investors are going to shy away from that environment and say it's too risky, or haven't thought it through well enough, or come up with a new, a new environment, and we'll see then you'll get, different responses. You'll need to really show that everything in place in that market is now conducive to what I'm trying to do.
And will you give them all those parameters? Will you say, there's all those different things you just said? Will you give them all those things, or will you just give them an overview so you're not giving away too much of how you actually think it through and come to that decision?
I mean, it depends on the ask. If I'm asking for an exorbitant amount of money, the more homework I have to show. If I'm asking for small fiddly funds, but I've got to demonstrate that this is what I'll use it for, and it will open the door to this stage, and then I'll ask for more capital at that stage, then I'm only going to express and explain the parts of the money that are required for that capital. So again, it's how you speak to your investors and the types of people that you're asking capital from. Astute or non-astute, because they're either way going to know. If they're astute, he's going to ask for 6 tranches of capital before we reach here. If you're going to ask a non-astute person for capital, then they're going to want different things, and it's all about whether you fit into their vibe and their world, and whether they're happy to go on that journey with you. So a very, very different type of answer.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many ways we can go with this conversation at this point. I think just to keep sort of as closely as possible to the episode ahead, which is integration. When the thing we also were touching on was startups and how they go about navigating their way through this, because a lot of that stuff that you're just talking about is like really high level big business, which has got lots of advisors, from the PwCs to little boutique groups that actually can give them more ways of pivoting inside something. And what do you say from a startup point of view, how to integrate what you have on hand, because not everyone can afford a Ryan. How do you feel, or what do you think is the key thing that you would want to say to a startup in terms of actually managing all those things?
Yeah, keep things simple. The more complexity you put into something in the beginning, it's going to be, way more outputs. So if you keep things simple and you keep reaffirming your direction, keep showing that, it is the right direction, or actually question where you're going to be at the next roadblock or the next intersection, then by doing that, you've already done the default homework required to speak to the audience around you, whether it's your internal team that are supporting what you're doing, whether it's partners that you're looking to align with, or investors. So you've always on the journey of demonstrating where you are and the homework that you've done to get from point A to point B with point E as the direction. You're just showing at each interval your progress. And so it's easier to then adapt within a shorter space of time to a change than trying to go from A to E all at once and then say we failed because of this. That's the issue. And I think a lot of startups are not quite familiar with that process. It's more like...
So would your overview be that they don't stay long enough? That they're almost there? Or
Definitely. I think a lot of people give up too early in the journey. Again, it depends on what you're doing. Certain things take a lot of time. If you're putting some medical device into the market, or a medication or something, obviously it needs time and research. That's why there's massive budgets in R&D and the drug and pharma industry, and it's because it takes so much time to burn through all these different things that are going to fail to then find the right thing. And then by the time they price that thing into the market, it's covered for all the losses that they've made around all the other things that they've tried to succeed with that didn't work, right?
So would you say the thing therefore would be that if time is the essence about staying in something, if you're doing it in Australia, your living costs and salary and experience is going to be, like I just looked at the cost of salaries around the world. But then if you move to another country to make it viable to stay the distance to get there, then you've got all these other problems that you've got to deal with about being in that country, which is why they're on lower salary. So there's a whole lot of factors in there. How do you work on how to balance all that, to work that out?
I mean, there's a lot of cheat sheets available. The thing is this, never be one-dimensional. If you're in Australia, and it doesn't mean because you're exceeding and started your business in Australia that Australia is the only place in the whole world to trial that business, you know?
Yeah.
You can try the methodologies of that businesses in other markets without burning huge capital or without being positioned solely in that space. That's when partnering and leveraging comes into play. You could use that as a trial test.
I remember you told me about that with the Taiwanese market. That yes. I think Chinese would, even though they got a huge market, they would test it on the Taiwanese market because they were known for being able to pump stuff through it and see if it had a market or not. So
yeah, and also clever, really. They also use that as a test market sometimes because it's a safe zone for other external investors who trust the Taiwanese framework of capital again and how that market moves. So if something is being invested in from the Taiwanese framework, then they'll be more inclined to co-invest. So it all really depends on the nature of what it is you're trying to do and how quick you have to adapt to that, and you know, where the trust protocols come in for investors or for partners or, you know, whoever is involved in that whole ecosystem of what you're trying to achieve. But being a startup, you mustn't be one-dimensional. It's the best piece of advice that, you know, I can give. And always trial and test things in other spaces. Find ways to do things without burning cash. The internet helps us do so many things without, you know, huge expenditure. And leverage off the failures of others and expertise that, you know, where others have won, pull those things through. You don't have to always reinvent the wheel. I mean, the American mindset is, you know, fail fast. And I did a video about this back, I don't know where it is, I'll have to look through archives to find it, but I did a video of it before. And you don't always need to fail fast. You just need to, if it's something absolutely brand new, then yes, there's no other way because you've got nothing else to lean on to leverage for your data outputs and for everything else. But if it's something that has common traits, why go and fail again? Because the nature of failure is the road to success. It's not that. You go and pull off others' failures, learn from what they did, and then you absolutely don't drive that road. You already know how to fix that. It's already paved road. So if others have failed for you, you don't need to go fail again just to say, well, I did it too. So, you know, it's adapt quickly, change quickly, use the failures of others to then not go down that road, not burn cash that you don't necessarily, you know, need to burn to prove your direction or that you've done your hard yards. So accelerate at a pace that's conducive to your abilities to execute in the market. Execution is a big thing. Like I said earlier before when we started the first part of the podcast, it's like, you've got amazing things that innovators create, and sometimes they're the wrong people to take it to the market, and sometimes they're the right people. But also adjusting pace to suit environment, to suit the team around you, because I find that that's a big issue with me at times. Sometimes I'm very quick, and my team around me are not as, you know, hey, how come we have to be at that pace all of a sudden? You know, and I'm like, because the market is turning soon, so we need to be ahead of the curve. And they don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to do it as quickly, or they're still figuring out how to do it. So getting everyone into alignment is not an easy thing. It's probably the hardest thing. And it's if I was to find what is my weakness in business, it will probably be that I know the people around me and what their capabilities are, but getting them to do it in the time frame that you need them to do it requires a different level of management and leadership. Adapt to scenarios.
In terms of startups, nimble and quick and able to do a lot of different things quickly is actually the startup personality. That more slow person is the one for when you do have all your resources in place.
I'll argue that because, although startups think they're nimble and quick, the first couple of hurdles and they've failed and they think they're dead already. But yet, that was just proving ground.
Yeah, I get it.
That was just the proving ground. So, there's a lot of things startups think they know, but they don't because they haven't been in the game long enough to know. And they haven't had that staying power to see the troughs and tricks and trips and, all of the fallen off the cliff a few times and, found a way to hang on. They haven't been through that yet. So the first hurdle they get, they give up. It's like, we did our best anyway. Here we go. And you got to be able to stomach all of those hurdles. But you also you learn through, I predict that there's a hurdle. They haven't seen it yet, but my intuition is telling me because of these things around me, there's definitely going to be something there. I don't know what it quite is at the moment. When you get to that level of intuition and what you're doing, then you're getting there. You're getting the grounds of you're going to come out of being a startup quite quickly at that phase because you know the segments of development, you see hurdles ahead of time, you understand time frames of things, you understand how to leverage, you understand how to gain capital from different parts of the market. You understand which part of your business is becoming redundant as well and which part to cut off. There's just so much continuation that happens in the evolution of a business cycle from starting it to business never really ends. It ends for the person if they're selling out of their business, but that business itself could still continue. That's why,
It's like a thought. It has continuousness.
Yes. If you put the right people in place, there's a continuum. If you put the wrong person in place, then it's a dead end. And then that business cycles in and out of the ecosystem of businesses, and it will start up somewhere else as something else using some of the logic that you had in that business or some of the IP that was there or something. So, everything is ever changing, and it's recycling, whether you see it or not, especially in business. Proven ground generates investor capital quicker than brand new ground because no one likes risk, or very few like to stomach risk at that end. And so I guess that's food for thought for startups.
Yes. Look, I'm going to stop it at this point because we've gone for a good hour and a half. And I'd really like to take this up again, though. So I'd like to have a moment's pondering and come back to some of these points. And thank you so much for the introduction into this area, because there's more, I think, in terms of the integration stuff that we can touch on. And I really thank you for joining on my second podcast.